All right, welcome back to lecture number 18. We're talking about the Articles of Confederation. This is topic 3.7. The main theme that we're looking at here is politics and power. So our learning objective for today is to explain how different forms of governments developed and changed as a result of the revolutionary period. And we're going to begin with the state constitution. So in 1776, as soon as the uh, Second Continental Congress declares independence, the states are going to be ordered to write new state constitutions that break ties with Britain. So the key concept here says many new state constitutions place power in the hands of the legislative branch and maintain property qualifications for voting and citizenship. Now, common features that these constitutions had, aside from the legislative branches, was that they included declarations or bills of rights for the protection of individual liberties from the government. So they're trying to set up a limited government. They had separate branches of government with a legislative branch, an executive branch, and judicial branch. And they also expanded suffrage for white males. So they reduced the amount of property necessary for white males to be eligible to vote. Now, all of the requirements varied from state to state, and New Jersey even allowed women to vote up until 1807. There are going to be differences within each state constitution because each one had its own set of ratification debates, and the states themselves were different in character and culture, and so different things were important for them. Now, the new form of government that is created, the new national form of government, are called the Articles of Confederation. So they unified the newly independent states, creating a central government with limited power. In the actual text of the Articles of Confederation, they call it a league of friendship between all of these states. It's more of an alliance than it is a central form of government. So they have a unicameral legislature. That means that they have one house for their legislature. There's no executive or judicial branch. And for this one legislature, every state receives one delegate to represent them. The delegate is not directly elected by the people of the state. Instead, it is elected by the representatives in the state legislatures. Now, in that unicameral legislature, in order to pass laws, they needed to have a supermajority of 9 out of 13 states. So they needed at least 75% majority. And then if they wanted to change anything within the Articles of Confederation, they needed unanimous consent. So any amendment needed to have the support of all of the states. The powers that it gave the central government was the ability to declare war, to enter into treaties, and borrow money. But that is really it. There weren't many powers that were available to the Articles of Confederation, which is going to be one of the big problems for it. So let's look at here. The weak central government. After the revolution, difficulties over international trade, finances, interstate commerce, foreign relations, and internal unrest led to calls for a stronger central government. So the problems just pile on here for the Articles of Confederation. As far as international trade goes, England, after having been defeated in the Revolutionary War, they retreat as a trading partner. Before the revolution, they made up about 75% of all of the colonial trade. And after the revolution, they said, all right, United States, you want to be independent, you don't want to be a part of the British Empire, then fine. Let's see how you do without us as a trading partner. So it's going to kick off a post-war economic depression that's going to be difficult for the Articles of Confederation to do anything about. As far as finances, the legislature did not have the power to tax, so they had no revenue. And they also had all of this war debt that they had to pay. And all of the states had their own war debt that they had to pay. The only way they could raise revenue was to ask for money from the states. And each state had its own currency. And because the currency was being overprinted in these states, they were mired by inflation. So the currency that they were using in the states was really kind of worthless. So there is one example of such currency here on the slide from the state of New Hampshire. They could print as many of these as they wanted to in order for their economy to continue. With interstate commerce, The states could place tariffs on one another. They saw each other as economic competitors. They wanted to protect the industries within each state's boundaries, and so therefore they would place tariffs on one another to try and protect those domestic industries. And it had the negative effect of slowing down or deterring economic activity within the new United States. Continuing on here with more problems, foreign relations, the new United States were too weak to enforce the Treaty of Paris. Per the Treaty of Paris, the British were supposed to evacuate all of their troops and all of their outposts in the Western United States, but they remained there through the 1800s because the United States had no ability to enforce that part of the treaty. They were also supposed to pay out some of the damages that was incurred by the Loyalists during the war. And again, the Articles of Confederation were too weak to get the states to pay for the claims that the Loyalists were making for the territory or property that they lost as a result of the war. So all of this is going to lead to internal unrest. Shays' Rebellion happens in 1786 to 87. It was led by Daniel Shays, a Revolutionary War veteran, over this debt crisis that's going on in Massachusetts. A lot of people are going into debt in Massachusetts. A lot of people are being put in prison because they are in debt. There's a lack of paper money, there's high taxes, and so he takes up arms, tries to raid an armory of the state, and after several months, it takes the Massachusetts militia to put down the rebellion. And so this really showcased the weakness of the Articles of Confederation, that if there were to be another rebellion such as this one, that it would not have the ability to put it down. So this is going to lead to calls for a new form of government that's going to be stronger, to be better able to deal with these problems. Now, the one positive thing that the Articles of Confederation were able to do was to organize the Northwest Territory under the Northwest Ordinance. So this key concept here says, as settlers moved westwards during the 1780s, Congress enacted the Northwest Ordinance for admitting new states. The ordinance promoted public education, the protection of private property, and a ban on slavery in the Northwest Territory. So this Northwest Ordinance organized Western Territory for settlement. It created the plots that were going to be sold off. The land sales were going to feed the treasury because it was going to be the new national revenue. This was the only way that the Articles of Confederation could get money in their treasury. A portion of the land sales would go to fund education in the territory. Land would be specifically parceled out so that a portion of the profits was going to go to funding education. And then finally, it put a ban on slavery in this new territory. So in this entire Northwest Ordinance, slavery would not be allowed. So no one could cross into these territories and bring enslaved people with them. And for that reason, as enslaved people begin to escape their enslavement more and more, they're going to go into this new territory thinking that they're going to be able to live freely once they get there. Now, the other thing I want to point out on this map on the left side is that there are still native tribes that are living in the Northwest Territory. Despite it having been parceled out in portions to be sold to white settlers, there are still going to be Native Americans there, and that's going to lead to problems because they're not going to stop fighting against the United States until 1795, when the fighting ends at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. All right, so that's it. Let's talk about the recap. State constitutions established Republican forms of government while limiting voting rights, mostly to white males with property. The new form of government, the Articles of Confederation, was the first form of government, included a unicameral legislature with limited powers. Then a weak central government led to the problems with foreign, economic, and domestic policy. And then the one good thing, the one victory that they had was the Northwest Ordinance. It organized Western Territory for future settlement, banning slavery in the region. So that is it for this lecture. Please come back for the next one, in which we talk about the form of government that's going to replace the Articles of Confederation, and that is the U.S. Constitution. All right, have a great day, and I'll see you on the next lecture.